we need to celebrate this constitution for many important things. That is, if you could see throughout the world, many democratic nations have come, many democratic nations have had their constitution. They started their journey with a constitution, but they wouldn't have survived as a democracy for a long period of time. They wouldn't have survived with the same constitution for a long period of time. If you could take France, that is also democracy, but they had almost 4 to 5 constitutions within the 21st century itself. If you could see our neighboring country called Sri Lanka, they had a lot of constitutional changes. So constitutional amendment is different, but changing the entire constitution from the scratch is different. If you take India, India is called as island of democracy. Island of democracy means it is surrounded by a lot of unstable states. And if you could see, in 1947, when India decided to choose this democratic path, நம்ம வந்து ஒரு சுதந்திர நாடா இருக்கணும், ஆனா ஜனநாயக நாடா இருக்கணும். So on the democratic path, when Indian Constitution, when India chose at 1947, many were doubting whether India will survive with this constitutional experiment or this democratic experiment. Like for example, many of the constitutional experts of that point of time opined that democracy is suitable only for the advanced nation or literate nation or an educated nation. படிச்சவங்க இருந்த நாட்டுல தான் வந்து டெமோக்ரஸி இருக்கும், படிக்காதவங்க இருந்த நாட்டுல வந்து அதுல வந்து டெமோக்ரஸி இருக்கக்கூடாது, கொஞ்சம் சர்வாதிகாரத்தனம் தான் இருக்கணும். And there are two important ideologies which are existing, that is communism and capitalism in both part of the world, democracy and dictatorship in law in many part of the world. So India had to choose what is going to be their journey. But having survived the 200 years of despotic rule of British, and having survived the taste of authoritarianism, having tasted the realities of dictatorship kind of rule for the past 200 years, and our entire Indian national movement focused on democratic ideals. So they always aspired for democratic ideals. They wanted freedom of expression, they wanted self-government, they wanted federalism, they wanted autonomy to decide their own future, they wanted welfare scheme. So indeed they asked for a welfare state to British. So when entire India's national movement asked for democracy to the British, so once British left, we should establish the nation based on the same ideals for which we fought. If you could compare a lot of nations at that point of time, when they started their journey, they started off with a lot of ambitions, but within 5 years or within 10 years, the same personalities who started this nation, who are the national heroes, and who championed the cause of the freedom of their respective nations, but once they came to power, once they got their independence, once they got the powers in their hand, automatically in some point of time, their journey drifted away from the democracy. They became despotic, they became authoritarian, and they broke all the ideals for which they stood for during their national movement. So when India got their independence in 1947, they had two options: either to go in authoritarian mode or a dictatorship mode or a benign dictatorship mode, or to go with the outright democracy for which they asked. And we decided to choose the democracy. A lot of scholars at international level, they doubted the India's democracy. They said India will not even survive for a decade. And one famous journal, one famous newspaper, National Daily, at that point of time of a famous organization, said that Nehru will survive to see the failure of the universal adult franchise. So Nehru will see the failure of universal adult franchise. So this was one thing. And other people said that in an uneducated nation with very little literacy, democracy will not even sustain. People will not even understand what to vote. When people are illiterate, they won't choose the right leaders. So a lot of criticism were made, a lot of questions were made. But we as a nation, the freedom fighters who themselves became politicians after the independence, they decided, they stood their ground, and they gave in a lot of determination. They put in a lot of efforts, and they made this constitution, and we started our journey as a all-right democracy. So at one side we are having a severe partition, at another side we are having poverty. In this point of time, we will stand with our democracy. So we will stand with the ideals of democracy. We will protect the institutions of democracy. We will provide welfare to people. We will ensure social justice to people. We will ensure the secular principles to the people. So with all these ideals, we started our journey as a democracy in 1947, and we started our republican journey on 26th January 1950. So it's been 72 years. Still our constitution is resilient. Still all the nations have, all the leaders who drove the nation, they have respected the democratic ideals, and they have propagated the democratic ideals all the opposition party and ruling party, when a party wins the election, the opposition party and those party who are ruling the elections, they have ensured a smooth transition. Even America, the one of the oldest democracy, couldn't ensure a smooth transition in the previous election. But we as a nation have never stopped the smooth transition at the national level. Whenever a party wins, all the opposition party will come forward and they will say, இது மக்கள் எடுத்த முடிவு, அதை நாங்க எடுத்துக்கிறோம். அந்த மாதிரி வந்து this is people's voice, so we will accept our defeat. So this was the India's case for the past 72 years, and none of the leaders had this authoritarian or this dictatorship mindset, all this ambitious mindset. So with the support of people, with the support of all the leaders, with the support of politicians, with the support of bureaucracy, with the support of lawyers, with the support of judges, with the support of each and every citizen of India, we are proudly a strong democracy even after 72 years. And our constitution starts with we the people of India. So what it says, this people of India are giving the authority to this nation. So the authority for the entire nation are coming from people of India. It is not coming from any holy book. It is not coming from any holy scripture. It is not coming from any politician. It is not coming from any one caste, community, creed, race. It is coming from we, the people of India. So this constitution is provided by people of India, and this constitution is for all, entire people of India. The Constituent Assembly with 299 members, of course, yeah, after the people from Pakistan they left, with 299 members, they almost spent 166 days, and the draft constitution itself was considered for 114 days. They met and they discussed this only draft constitution for 114 days, and almost 2,400 odd amendments were suggested after considering all the amendments from the people. So amendments were not only suggested by the Constituent Assembly members, the 299 members, the amendments were also given by the people throughout India through letters and telegrams. So after considering all the amendments, we had this final draft. There was a very big debate to how we are going to form the government, whether we are going to consider it as United States of India or Union of States. So this was one important debate. We decided to have Union of States because we are a nation and we are dividing the states for the administrative convenience and not states coming together and forming the government. So we decided to have it as a India, the Bharat, that is Union of States. So this was one big important debate. The second important debate was whether to have a parliamentary form of government or a presidential form of government. So number one, we were familiar with the parliamentary form of government. So in Charter Act of 1853, brought in this preliminary parliamentary structure, having deliberation in the parliament, and we are also exposed to bicameralism. We are exposed to this cabinet form of government, where the Council of Ministers will be responsible to the legislature from Montagu Chelmsford reforms. And this parliamentary form of government was tasted with Indians themselves in 1937, when the Indian National Congress ruled for 28 months. With whatever power they were having, they brought in a lot of reforms in the 28 months. So since we are familiar with this parliamentary form of government, we chose to be a parliamentary form of government. And and another important reason why we chose parliamentary form of government is the diversity of the nation. So one is familiarity, another is diversity. So India as a nation with so many diverse people, so many diverse community, religion, race, and linguistic diversity is very huge in India. So if if you want to accommodate this much diversity, presidential form of government will not be a suitable thing. You need representatives from every class to be represented in the parliament, and that parliament should be above rather than the Council of Ministers. So that's why we chose parliamentary form of government, to respect this diversity. So there was this debate whether to go into parliamentary or presidential. So we chose responsibility over stability, because presidential form of government is said to have stability, but parliamentary form of government is having responsibility. Council of Ministers are responsible to parliament, but in presidential form of government they are not responsible. Presidential form of government, the executive act independently to their Congress. So we wanted responsibility of the rulers rather than stability, because stability was not our issue. The rulers who are ruling for 200 years never had responsibility. So we chose the responsibility, and that's why we chose parliamentary form of government. This was the first important debate in the constitution. The next important debate was whether to have a federal structure or unitary structure, and obviously India with a lot of linguistic diversity, because this linguistic diversity and linguistic based provinces as a concept, it originated in 1920s itself, when Indian National Congress rejigged their party based on the linguistic lines, like Tamil Nadu Congress Committee. or Andhra Congress Committee, or Kerala Trivandrum Congress Committee, or Bombay Congress Committee. So all these Congress committees were made in 1920 based on linguistic lines as wished by Mahatma Gandhi. And in Nehru report, we asked for linguistic states. Nehru report, the famous Nehru report of 1929, where Indians showed that they are capable of making a constitution. There was one joke which was made by the Prime Minister of Britain. Indians are, yes, we will give independence, but are you capable of making constitution? Do you know constitution? He gave a command and we made a constitution. That is this Nehru report. So under Motilal Nehru, at that point of time, a lot of leaders came together and they made a model constitution for this nation, with to some extent we had certain consensus. Even though we had many differences, we had certain consensus. So in Nehru report also we supported linguistic provinces. So when so many languages are there, when so many ethnicity is there, we cannot have a unitary form of government, because linguism is stronger than any other feeling. Since linguism is a strong feeling, if we are, that linguistic based identity will be stronger. So if linguistic based identity is going to be stronger, we have to ensure a self-determination for the linguistic group. So that is the reason behind the linguistic states. So this linguism was already there existing, and it was also, and there was an outclash with respect to linguism in the 1937 when Hindi was made the mandatory in education. During the Congress rule itself, there was opposition to the making Hindi as the common language. So that showed that we should be a federal nation with a lot of states. With the two-tier federal nation with sharing of power between union government and state government, and that's why we established 7th schedule of the constitution. So our federalism, our states are not satellites to the center. Our states are not dependent on center for any power. Union government and state government are themselves, they are independently stronger and independently sovereign in their own list of 7th schedule. So this was the case of our federalism. So this feeling of diversity ensured that federal nation will be a right thing to go forward. So that is one thing. So this was one debate, and we came into conclusion. So there were innumerable debates throughout the constitution. Each and every provision of the constitution has a days-long debate. So after all this deliberation, with the consensus among the people, we brought this constitution and we gave it ourselves on 26th of November, which is also the Constitution Day. So this was the origin point. So if you could ensure one thing, this constitution was not top down. It was not given something like a top down thing, a small group of people determining it and imposing it on all. It was brought based on consensus. Because Constituent Assembly represented each and every segment of the population. Drafting committee also had representatives. So Indian National Congress was a dominant player, but drafting committee was led by a person who opposed to the Indian National Congress. That is Mr. Ambedkar. So that was the democracy which was existing at that point of time. If you could see, Congress had the brutal majority in the Constituent Assembly. Of course, yeah, Muslim League and Communist and all the sections of the society were represented. But still, the drafting committee was headed by the person who opposed Indian National Congress throughout his journey. So this is the democratic ideal. So with the consensus of this level only, we brought the constitution. So whenever we are studying constitution, if you are having any questions regarding any provisions of the constitution, one good thing is to refer the Constituent Assembly debates. Even the judges of the Supreme Court, they refer to the debates to take decision with regarding to any provision during the course of judicial review, whenever, because the Supreme Court is being given the provision. So with all these debates and consensus, we brought this constitution. So one important thing which you have to note here. So how come a lot of constitution in various nations are failing? A lot of nations we could see neighbors on throughout all the neighbors had military rule, military taking over the power or scrapping the constitution. We have seen throughout our neighborhood, we have seen in all the developing nations. But India is one exception here. Why this has not happened? Again, the origin goes to the intellect of our constitutional fathers and mothers, of course. The Constituent Assembly members, they had an intelligent provision in our constitution, which is called as Article 368, the amendment process. The amendment process, they will say it is a right blend of rigidity and flexibility. So why constitutions are being scrapped throughout the world? Because the amendment there is this problem. So that's why it is being scrapped. But Namma Urla it has survived strong mainly because of the blend of rigidity and flexibility. For certain simple things, you can easily amend the constitution. If you want to change the name of Orissa to Odia, Odisha, you can change it. If you want to change Madras to Tamil Nadu, you can change it. No need to do any constitution amendment. You can do it just if you want to increase the number of judges of the Supreme Court, you can do it with simple majority. There are certain features which you can do with a special majority. That is with 2/3 member present and voting and 50% of the total membership of the house. So only with the special majority you can pass certain features like DPSP or fundamental rights or any crucial features. And there are certain features which touches the federal principles, which touches the powers of the state government, which touches the powers of the Supreme Court and High Court. There are many features which needs the ratification of the states. So it is bringing in the aspirations of everyone. Like for example, if you want to change the name of the state, you no need special majority or ratification of the state. You can do it simply. So அது வந்து அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு தேவை இருக்கும்போது அந்த மாதிரி சிம்பிளா ஒரு ப்ரொசீஜர். காம்ப்ளெக்ஸா வந்து ஃபெடரல் ஃபீச்சரை டச் பண்ணும்போது நீங்க ஸ்டேட்ஸோட பர்மிஷன் வாங்கணும் அப்படின்னு வச்சிருக்காங்க. Like when GST was brought, what happened? We brought this 101st Constitution Amendment Act, and all the almost 16 states it went for the ratification of the state because we are taking the taxation power of the state. State legislatures, after their ratification only, GST came into force. Like Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and then will go to the states, and then it will go to the president. So this blend of flexibility and rigidity is one important intellectual feature of our constitution, which made our constitution to survive. Amendments are very crucial. So that is one important thing about which I'll also be talking at 6 p.m. So join at 6 p.m. to detail to see amendments in detail. So this is one important feature which you have to note. Another important feature, another one intellectual feature which we added in our constitution is asymmetric federalism. So what is this asymmetric federalism? If you take USA, all the states are considered to be equal. So they are having equal powers, and actually USA is having only union list, and all the residuary powers are given to the states. So that is a strong federation. But India could not have a strong federation. That's why, as KC Ware said, we are a quasi-federal state, because even though we are had state governments, but they are not autonomous in their own area. So a lot of in many areas, the unitary powers will come into play. So why we brought this asymmetric federalism? At one side, we are having a fully resistant northeastern states who weren't very much interested during the integration process in 1947 to join India. There was a lot of insurgency in the northeastern states, in all the area, in Assam, in the Naga. At that time, we didn't have Nagaland, Naga region, Manipur region, Mizoram region, and a few parts of Arunachal Pradesh. All these regions had the insurgency of not joining India. So they wanted autonomy, which is as equivalent as what the union government is having. So at another point, we had the Jammu and Kashmir. So Jammu and Kashmir wanted to become a sovereign nation, but because of the invasion by the Pakistan, they had to join India, and they joined India as a autonomous state through the temporary provision of Article 370. So another side, we are having Jammu and Kashmir, which wanted to be an independent nation, but joined India based on the situational requirements. So like this, there are many states with a huge amount of tribal population. In 1947, we had this Telangana movement going on in this Telangana region. That is, at that point, was called as Hyderabad, in the Hyderabad region. So, and we had this Kebaga movement in West Bengal. In the same time, in 1947, we are having movements in Telangana, we are having movements in West Bengal, where people are asking for a lot of autonomy. At the same time, insurgency also started at that point of time. So in order to control the insurgency, you should provide them the self-determination. You have to provide them the autonomy. That's why we brought Article 371 into the Constitution, 370 and 371. Because, okay, we are providing you autonomy, stay with India. We are providing you with self-reliance, stay with India. So Article 370 provided the special status and autonomy and special constitution and flag to Jammu and Kashmir. And Article 371 provided a lot of autonomy. Like for example, in Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, Sikkim, we are providing them the rights to protect their culture, even though sometimes a few rights are contravening with the provisions of the constitution. So, like for example, we are having in Nagaland, in the Panchayati Raj systems, in the local representation, they are not providing 33% reservation for women, which is a mandatory provision in the constitution. But in order to provide them autonomy, we are giving certain, we need in the Maya adjustments we need. So that is democracy. So democracy is not about நான் சொல்றதுதான் கரெக்ட் அப்படின்னு சொல்றது டெமோக்ரஸி இல்ல. டெமோக்ரஸினா என்னதுன்னா நம்ம எல்லாரும் சேர்ந்து ஒரு முடிவு எடுக்கலாம், அதுதான் டெமோக்ரஸி. ஓகே, உங்க எல்லாரோட வருத்தங்கள், அது இட் கேன் பி எனிதிங், இட் கேன் பி ரைட் விங், இட் கேன் பி லெஃப்ட் விங், It can be center, it can be right to the center, left to the center, it can be neutral, whatever. But everyone should give their voice, and based on all, everyone's needs, we have to take a decision. It's not that நான் சொல்றதுதான் ரூல், அதை ஃபாலோ பண்ணலாம் அப்படின்னு சொன்னா that is not democracy. So on that lines only, democracy is about, Obama gave a famous statement, democracy means compromise. So democracy இன்னொரு பேர் என்னதுன்னா compromise, because you will have an aspiration, your people in the other side, they will have a different aspiration, but both are equal citizens in the nation. So when you are bringing in a final decision, it should be satisfying both the people without hampering the ideals which are enshrined by the founders of the constitution or the human rights. So in the mari ஒரு சைடுல human rights இருக்கு, இன்னொரு சைடுல வந்து we are having the basic values, morals and ethics, இன்னொரு சைடுல we are having national ideals like this, liberty, equality, fraternity, socio political economic justice. இன்னொரு சைடுல வந்து these people who are asking for their own individual autonomy. இவங்க எல்லாரோட ரைட்ஸுமே வந்து we should be hearing, and we need to identify a compromise. So democracy is about compromise. Consensus takes time. So this is the nature of democracy. So under aspirations cater பண்றதுனா we had this asymmetric federalism. Article 371 la a lot of states you are having individual power. Scheduled area in Schedule 5 you are having autonomy. Tribal area in Schedule 6 you are having autonomy. So the autonomy given for the scheduled area and tribal area and for the 371 states, 371 Article 371 states is higher than what the rest of the states are having, like Tamil Nadu or Kerala. The amount of power we are having in this federation is lesser compared to the states in Article 371 or Schedule 5 or Schedule 6. So this asymmetric federalism is to provide the aspirations for the people, to accommodate the various diverse cultures within it. And you would have known the story of tribal Panchayat. When tribal people wanted to be integrated within the nation, we need to integrate the nation only with their consent. So that is what the thing was there. So this is one important feature. Asymmetric federalism, if you could see, it might sound எதுக்கு இந்த மாதிரி unequal treat பண்றீங்க, but you need to treat unequally in order to accommodate everyone. So that is the principle of equity. So that is what our constitution to asymmetric federalism is also ensuring. So this is one important feature which you have to note down. Another important feature which was ambitious when it was said and the entire world laughed was Article 326, which talks about the universal adult franchise. So everyone above 21 years of age can vote. Yeah, of course, 61st Amendment only made it 18. So at that point of time, it was 21. So when we said that anyone above the age of 21, both male and female, without any educational or economic criteria, we are giving vote to everyone. A lot of the nation were laughing. Even நான் தான் பழமையான டெமோக்ரஸின்னு மாறு தட்டிக்கிறேன், நான் தான் ஐ அம் தி ஓல்டஸ்ட் டெமோக்ரஸின்னு சொல்றேன். அமெரிக்கா ஆல்சோ டிடன்ட் ஹேவ் யூனிவர்சல் அடல்ட் ஃபிரான்ச்சைஸ் இன் 1947 when India brought. So that is the the colored people were not having the voting rights. So only after Martin Luther King இந்த மாதிரி நிறைய பேருடைய மூவ்மெண்ட்னால தான் வந்து we had the voting power for the colored people in 1964. 1964ல தான் அமெரிக்காலே யூனிவர்சல் அடல்ட் சஃப்ரேஜ். But we had a universal adult suffrage in 1950, and we conducted a nationwide election in 1952, one of the largest democratic exercise at that point of time, because at that point of time India had 30 crore people. 30 crore people, almost voting power was there with some 19 crore, I think, roughly, I'm not sure. So with 19 crore people, we conducted an election which is the highest at that point of time. So that is one thing. So one famous journal said that Nehru will survive to see the failure of universal adult franchise. But even after 72 years, we are successfully conducting universal adult franchise, and we had smooth transition throughout. Of course, political instability will come. Without instability, there is no stability. But we have survived this constitution for 72 years. So that is one important feature. Providing universal adult franchise without educational or gender discrimination or any caste discrimination or racial discrimination is a very big achievement of India's constitution. And of course, it has been reduced to 18 now. So that is one important thing which our constitution brought. Another important feature which our constitution brought was there was a criticism that India's constitution is a borrowed constitution. Of course, yeah, Ambedkar itself in Constituent Assembly speech, he will say that we almost ransacked. He will use this word called ransacked. We ransacked almost all the constitutions of the world which were existing at that point of time. And we inspired the features. Yes, namak munnadi ortha nalla senjidha alan eduthukiradhu thappilla. So we inspired the features from all these constitutions which are existing at that point of the time, and we brought in the provisions. எல்லா provisions-உமே எடுத்துட்டு வந்தோம், but we didn't blindly copy paste it. Control X, Control C, Control V இல்ல, எல்லாமே எழுதணும், அதுல டைப் பண்ணணும். So we didn't copy paste it. So many features we would have adopted it to the India's condition. If you could see, there is no nation which is having Constitution Article 368 with flexibility and rigidity. There is either you have parliamentary sovereignty or you will have the judicial supremacy. But India is having the blend of both parliamentary sovereignty and judicial supremacy. Either you will have a due process or law or procedure established by law. India is having the blend of both. We are having due process procedure established by law and due process of law wherever it is needed. So in the மாதிரி வந்து wherever it is needed அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு flexible provisions வந்து we are having in our constitution. We are having all India services, union services and state services. So இந்த மாதிரி எல்லா லெவல்லயுமே வந்து we are having this flexibility which suits our own condition. Like அதுல ஒரு முக்கியமான feature வந்து which we suiting our condition na, like all the nations வந்து they had when a democratic nation is coming into play, they will try to remove the inequalities or past injustices அதெல்லாம் correct பண்ணணும்னு நினைப்பாங்க. Racial injustice or gender injustice was not a very big topic. Gender injustice became a prominent topic in 1980s அப்புறம் தான். But racial injustice அதுதான் வந்து entire world பேசிட்டு இருந்தாங்க. Like அதே மாதிரி இந்தியால what was the injustice which was existing for the past 2000 years? That is caste injustice. So injustice in the name of caste was existing, and untouchability will abolish in any form. So Article 17 is the most prominent part of the Constitution, which abolishes the untouchability, and Article 331, which provided, and Article 331, and in DPSP we are having Article 46, which all ensured that the oppressed community who suffered these injustice of the caste inequalities should be abolished, and they should be treated equally. So equality of status and opportunity. So equality of status and opportunity and promote among them all. So this word came into play. So Article 17 and the provision of reservation, that is affirmative action to ensure equity, is another phenomenal feature of India's constitution, which stands about in the caste injustice வந்து abolish பண்ணணும் அப்படிங்கிறது வந்து we had before USA could abolish the racial discrimination, because till 1960s they had racial segregation. So racial segregation na white people வேற office, black people வேற, white people வேற டாய்லெட், மேல் ஃபீமேல் டாய்லெட் நம்ம கேள்விப்பட்டிருக்கோம், white people டாய்லெட், black people டாய்லெட், இப்படி வந்து யூஎஸ்ஏல இருக்கு. ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி எல்லாம் இல்லாம இந்த untouchability in any form should be abolished, and no one should be denied entry in the public places based on caste as a reason அப்படின்னு வந்து Article 15ல வந்து you will have this provision: religion, race, caste, sex or place of birth. So this is one important feature which we adopted, that is abolition of this. Another important thing which is time tested thing with a lot of controversies, but still it is standing strong, that is secularism, the secular part of the India's constitution. Of course the word secular, which was added only in 42nd amendment தான், 42nd amendment தான் add பண்ணாங்க, but without even adding we had secular feature between Article 25 to 28. So everyone are given rights. So in preamble itself we'll have, you are having liberty to have your own thought, expression, belief, faith and worship. So providing the religious rights and treating all religions equally. And if you could note one thing here, நான் சொன்னல, secularism was there in USA, secularism was there in Europe. நம்ம secularism கண்டுபிடிக்கல. Of course ancient India had secularism, நம்ம secularism கண்டுபிடிக்கல. But when we brought secularism in our constitution, we brought a positive form of secularism, which is different from the western form of secularism. So இதுதான் வந்து borrowed constitution அப்படிங்கிற அந்த வேர்டை வந்து சொல்லக்கூடாது. ஏன்னா yes, we took the ideals, but we adopted it which is suitable for our own nation. We didn't just blindly take it. So positive form of secularism is suitable for India. ஏன்னா இந்தியால the religion which is religious culture of India is not similar to religious history of western nations. So that is the main thing which you have to understand here. And the religious diversity, because the majority religion which is practiced in India itself is having thousands of diversity. That is the nature of India's religion. The majority religion of India is having thousands of diversity within the religion itself. So this thing, it is not a homogeneous religion. The majority religion of India is a heterogeneous religion, and we are having many other religious minorities. So if இருக்கும்போது all the religions should be treated equally, and in western nations they will not interfere in the religious affairs. We decided that is not going to be our situation, because all the religions which is being practiced in India is having some sort of injustice within it. All the religions are having injustice, and we will interfere in it if it is contravening the provisions of the constitution. So that is what Article 25 says. Article 25 you are having right to follow your religion, but what is the exception given? Morality. If it is immoral, we will stop it. If it is affecting your health, we will stop it. If it is contravening to any other features of the constitution, we will stop it. So this is one important feature. So that is what the next point which you have to say. என்ன விஷயம்னா, which was discussed by Nehru during the Constituent. Of course, Constituent Assembly speech of Ambedkar is famous. I'll discuss briefly about that. But another important Constituent Assembly speech is Nehru's speech. The final speech of Nehru, when he gave, he spoke about this constitutional identity. So at that point of time, when nations have been formed, either they are being formed based on the linguistic lines, German, French, English, England, எல்லா linguistic lines, correct? Germany, France, Portugal, Spain, all the nations are based on linguistic lines. And nations are in religious lines, Pakistan or Indonesia. இல்லனா வந்து we are having all the Gulf nations. எல்லாமே வந்து they are established based on religious line. So Nehru said that in a nation as diverse as India, you cannot have a national identity. Oh, what is nation? Nation என்னதுன்னா, it is a common identity which we all get. So this national identity should not be based on religion. This national identity should not be based on a language. Because why? We are having innumerable religion. And the majority, so the majority religion of India itself is having thousands of diversity. So we cannot have the identity based on religion. Adhe mari we are having 2000 dialects in this nation. And of course, at that point of time, 14 scheduled languages. When the constitution came into force, there were only 14 scheduled languages in 8 schedule. Now we are having 22. So in the mari 22 languages in the nation, we cannot have the identity based on one language of called Hindi. So adanalada vandu our identity is constitutional identity. So in many nations, the relationship in Myanmar, they are trying to make the relationship identified based on Buddhism. So in the mari, that's why Rohingyas were persecuted. So in the mari or naadugalliyum religion, and of course in the medieval times the entire Europe was identified based on Christianity. So இப்போ வந்து we cannot have this because we are having many religions. So our identity is based on the identity provided by the constitution. So what is this constitutional identity? Constitutional identity is what is this? Preamble. Preamble இருக்கிற இந்த features பேஸ் பண்ணி இந்த features எல்லாம் நான் வந்து is going to be our identity. இந்த features எல்லாம் as a nation as a whole we are accepting. And இப்போ ஒரு இஸ்லாமிக் நேஷன்னா they wanted to protect their own religion. அந்த ரிலிஜன் ப்ரொடெக்ட் பண்றது தான் நேஷன் ஐடென்டிட்டி அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. ஆனா நம்மளுடைய லைக் பாகிஸ்தானுக்கு நான் சொல்றேன், யூ கம்பேர் வித் பாகிஸ்தான். பட் இந்தியாஸ் ஐடென்டிட்டி, why we have come together na, we have come together to protect this. We as a people of India have come together to protect these ideals, not any religion or language or any caste or any section. So that is what is called as constitutional identity. So we as a people of India, we are identifying ourselves based on India's constitution of liberty, equality, fraternity, justice. இதை வச்சுதான் வந்து we are identifying ourselves. So இதை இந்தியால எல்லாருக்கும் இன்ஸ்டால் பண்ணணும் அப்படிங்கிறதுக்கு தான் we are joined. And of course another important feature of this constitution is fundamental rights, ensuring the rights to the people and restricting the tyranny of the government. Fundamental rights not only provides the right to the people, it also provides restrictions to the state. நீ இதெல்லாம் பண்ணக்கூடாது, அதனாலதான் அது நெகட்டிவ் நேச்சர்னு சொல்றோம். So it restricts the state, it prevents the tyranny of the government. So that is one important thing which this our constitution is doing. So it provides the rights, at the same time it restricts the state. இதோட மீனிங் என்னதுன்னா, state cannot take away certain rights which are enshrined in the constitution in any situation. Of course in certain situations they can take in the emergency condition or in martial law, except for these conditions or when you are implementing article 39 BNC. இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு சில கண்டிஷன்ஸ் தாண்டி you cannot take away the rights of the people. So and we are having an right to constitutional remedies which ensures that these rights will be protected and anyone can go to Supreme Court. That's why it was called as heart and soul of the constitution. So by Ambedkar. So in the fundamental rights is one important feature which India, which the nation as a whole we got. Another important thing, we are not only providing fundamental rights, we are also providing instructions to the government. நீ கவர்மெண்டா ஃபாலோ பண்றப்போ இதெல்லாம் மைண்ட்ல வச்சுட்டு பண்ணு. That is DPSP, Directive Principles of State Policy. The instruction which are given to the government on the state when they are implementing the policies. So DPSP is a very important provision. And another important provision is integrated and independent judiciary. So in order for a nation to survive, in order for a democracy to survive, we need independent judiciary. So independent judiciary is a basic factor of the constitution. So the independent judiciary which is integrated throughout India. So we wanted integrated judiciary so that the justice is equal throughout India. Like if you go to America, one state la or law irukku, inor state la inor law irukku. One state la women can abort, inor state la women cannot abort. One state la LGBT community can get married, another state la LGBT communities are arrested and jailed. So in the mari states la vandu வேற வேற இருக்கு. பட் இந்தியால when justice is being ensured, it should be uniform throughout the nation. அதனால the same principle should be followed. அதனால we had integrated judiciary. Supreme Court at the top, High Court at the second level, district courts at the third level, and subordinate courts. But we, at the same time, it's an independent judiciary, independent of the government, independent of the legislature, independent of the executive. So that is very important. Independent judiciary and judicial independence is another important reason why our constitution survived for 72 years. Without independent judiciary, our constitution wouldn't have survived for 72 years. So that is very important thing. One landmark judgment, everyone knows Kesavananda Bharati case judgment. So whenever the executive or legislature, they are breaching the provisions given in the constitution or the procedures established by law, if that is not coming in sync with the values established by the constitution, and the time la automatically judiciary is coming into play and uplifting the democracy to another level. So that is a very important thing. So basic structure doctrine, whether it is the right thing to have or not, that is a very big debate. Many constitutional experts will say it is not there in the constitution. That is judicial intervention, which is not needed. But if see, even secular and socialist word was also not there. Even integrity word also was not there in the constitution. But when the need arises, we amended and we added. Similarly, when there was a need arising out, when the Supreme Court felt that judiciary, parliament was provided sovereignty. India has a blend of parliamentary sovereignty and judicial supremacy. Through parliamentary sovereignty, under Article 368, Parliament could amend a lot of features in the constitution. So அப்படி இருக்கும்போது, yes, whenever there is a power, there is a possibility for misuse of power. So அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு open-ended power இருக்கும்போது, there is a possibility to misuse. So under Article 13, Supreme Court is entitled to interpret the constitution. அதுதான் வந்து constitution makers decided. So this parliamentary sovereignty is an unbridled power. It should be controlled with some restriction. That control will be determined by judiciary in Article 13 சொல்லுது. So Article 13 comes into play. So under Article 13, Supreme Court, they brought this basic structure doctrine. Yes, you can amend any part of the constitution. That is the power which the constitution makers vested on the parliament as a constituent body. But you cannot breach the basic structure of the constitution. So that is very important milestone in our India's constitutional journey, because that judgment itself is a constitutional amendment. It is not there in the constitution. So that judgment provided another 50 years of longevity to the constitution. Without that judgment, again there would have been a possibility of a constitutional failure in India. Without the judgment, because how I will say, because there could have been threats to any of these words given in the constitution. When any of these words in the constitution would have been challenged, surely there would have been the outburst. So what are all the controversial area in our constitution? Whenever if it is touched, that will create a problem. That is one in the language, another in the secular aspect. These are the most contentious discussion which is happening throughout India. Secular parts of the constitution is a basic structure, so that cannot be disrupted. If that judgment, that Bommai case judgment was not there, then that would have created further unrest in India. So this Kesavananda Bharati case, about which we are going to discuss itself, is a very important part of this constitution, which enhance the longevity of this constitution. Of course, yeah, even though the constitutional makers never, they provided the utmost power to the parliament to amend, but constitution, the judiciary came into the right time. So Kesavananda Bharati case is an important feature. That is one thing. Another important feature of our India's constitution is establishing independent constitutional bodies. So you would have seen there are a lot of bodies. Of course, Supreme Court is one body which should be independent, but apart from that, there are certain other bodies whose independence is crucial for this democracy to survive and to extend the longevity of our constitution for further years. So Election Commission. So that is a very important body whose longevity and which should be ensured. So whose independence should be ensured, so that our constitution is getting the longevity of another 100 years or times immemorable. So that is one important feature of our constitution. Another important feature about which I didn't mention is the emergency provisions. One of the another most controversial provision of the India's constitution, Article 352, 356, and 360 is not a controversial feature because it was never invoked. But 352 and 356 are very controversial features, and 356 still it is creating some kind of problem. So these features also necessitated in our constitution, because there is always this debate. We are provided rights, we are provided all these ideals, should be ensured. Everyone is having fundamental rights, but one thing which you have to ensure, your fundamental right to expression should not affect another fundamental right of another person. Your fundamental rights, what is the restriction to the fundamental rights now? Unless it affects another person's fundamental rights. So that is the restriction. So in order to ensure fundamental rights, there we need some sort of reasonable restriction. Only with the reasonable restriction we can ensure fundamental rights of everyone. So that is the principle which you have to understand. Similarly, when certain circumstances arises, there is this necessity to convert this constitutional structure into unitary. But of course, yeah, luckily we had another remarkable amendment, that is 44th Amendment, which restricted all the controversial provisions. So that is the beauty. So without 44th Amendment, again, there is a possibility of the misuse of the India's constitution. So 44th Amendment came and restricted this national emergency and president rules provision. So we cannot totally remove the president rules provision, which should be there, but there should be reasonable restriction to the president rule as provided in the Bommai judgment and as provided by Sarkaria Commission and as provided by Punchi Commission. So that is what is needed. We cannot remove the president rule provision directly from the constitution, but we need amendments which is on the lines of Sarkaria Punchi Commission recommendation. So that is what the another important feature. Like we took this emergency provision from other constitution, German constitution, but we adopted it for our own necessities. So that is the beauty of our constitution making process. So finally, I would like to conclude by one, without this mention, I cannot talk about the constitution. Without mentioning one name, I cannot end the discussion about constitution. That is Bhim Rao Ambedkar, who is the who is also considered to be father of the constitution and chairman of the drafting committee. So why Bhim Rao Ambedkar's name is coming again and again whenever the constitution is being discussed means, when the constitution was adopted, that person single-handedly explained each and every provisions of the constitution. ஏன் இந்த ப்ரொவிஷன் இருக்கு, ஏன் இந்த ப்ரொவிஷன் வேணாம் அப்படிங்கிறதுக்கு வந்து ஒரு ப்ரொவிஷனுக்கும் சிங்கிள் ஹேண்டட்லி he gave explanation for hours and hours and hours. All the provisions of the constitution, whenever the Supreme Court or any people are having doubt with respect to provisions of the constitution, the one best thing to refer is the Constituent Assembly speech. If you go to Constituent Assembly speech, one name which is coming for the most number of times, that is going to be Ambedkar, because he gave explanation to each and every provisions, and listening to Ambedkar's speech will give you the clarity for the necessity for each features. So Ambedkar, when this constitution was going to be adopted, before the vote on 26th November, when we were voting, the previous day on the eve of the 26th November 1949, Ambedkar gave a famous speech in the Constituent Assembly. So that is a very famous speech, and which each and every citizen of India should read. So read the final speech of Dr. Ambedkar, which he gave in the Constituent Assembly. So on the speech, Ambedkar gave 5 important warnings. So on the 5 warnings, citizens should remember whenever we are dealing with the constitution. I'll give the 5 warnings briefly and I'll end the session. The first warning is this constitution is a good constitution or a bad constitution. It is not decided by the nature of the constitution. It is decided by the people whom you are electing. Okay, so if you are electing good people, it will be a good constitution. If you are electing bad people, it will be a bad constitution. So elect right people. So this is first warning is giving. Which political party? So obviously we experience the taste of the political parties during the British era. So we are going to follow the political party culture, multi-political party culture. So which political party யாரு கையில இந்த constitution நீங்க கொடுக்க போறீங்க? ஏன்னா even though it is going to be persons, MLA and MP, ultimately political party is going to have the control. Choose those political parties which is not giving priority to religion and language, which is giving priority to ideals mentioned in the constitution. Choose those parties which is giving priority to these ideals rather than those party which is giving priority to religion and language and race or caste. Race, caste, religion, language prioritize பண்ற party choose பண்ணாதீங்க. Choose the parties which are giving respect to these ideals. So this is another important thing. This ideal means preamble I'm just showing. So this is second warning which is giving. Third warning, that is the famous quote: Bhakti in religion will lead to the salvation of soul. Bhakti in politics will lead to degeneration and destruction. Bhakti in politics will lead to degeneration and destruction. So don't have hero worship. Avoid hero worship in politics. Politics is not about charisma. Politics is not about hero worship. Politics is about ideals given in the constitution. Politics is about morals. Politics is about we the people, not I am the person. So don't do hero worship in the politics. Bhakti in politics will lead to degeneration. The next warning which Ambedkar is giving is each fraternity. So we are bringing political democracy. Fundamental rights போட்டுட்டோம், political democracy சொல்லிட்டோம். We said every human is having one human, one vote, one value. All the humans are equal. Everyone's vote is equal. All will be treated equally. Equality கொண்டுட்டோம். எல்லாரும் ஈக்குவல் சொல்லிட்டோம். 17 ஆர்டிகல் 17 அன்டச்சபிலிட்டி அபாலிஷ் பண்ணிட்டோம். எவ்ரி இண்டிவிஜுவல் இஸ் ஈக்குவல் சொல்லிட்டோம். பட் யூ ஆர் கிவிங் ஈக்குவாலிட்டி ஒன்லி இன் தி பொலிட்டிக்கல் realms. It is only is in the paper. Without the equality in the social realms, that is, without social justice and without social democracy, political democracy is of no meaning. வெறும் பாலிடிக்ஸ் வைஸ் எல்லாருக்கும் ஓட்டுன்னு சொன்னா மட்டும் போதாது. சொசைட்டி வைஸ்லயும் சோசியல் ஆஸ்பெக்ட்ஸ்லயும் எவ்ரி ஒன் ஷுட் பி ஈக்குவல். ஸோ சோசியல் பொலிட்டிக்கல் டெமோக்ரஸி வித்வுட் சோசியல் டெமோக்ரஸி இஸ் ஆஃப் நோ மீனிங். So provide social democracy. And அப்பதான் வந்து அந்த யூனியன் ஆஃப் ட்ரினிட்டி பத்தி சொல்லியிருப்பார். லிபர்ட்டி ஈக்வாலிட்டி ஃப்ரெட்டர்னிட்டி, யூ cannot remove all. லிபர்ட்டி ஈக்வாலிட்டி ஃப்ரெட்டர்னிட்டி will always come together. இதுல ஏதாவது ஒண்ணு இல்லைனாலும் this constitution will not provide you whatever it is intended to. So all the three should be there. And last he is talking about fraternity. So அதுதான் வந்து நேருவோட constitutional identity அந்த debate. நேரு will say our identity is constitutional identity that comes from fraternity. Fraternity ல அவர் என்ன சொல்றாரு? Only if each and every individual of the nation identifies another human without seeing the religion, race, caste, sex. அந்த 4 விஷயங்களை தாண்டி அவங்கள ஒரு ஹியூமனா பார்த்தா மட்டும்தான், அவங்கள ஒரு சகோதரனா பார்த்தா மட்டும்தான், சகோதரியா பார்த்தா மட்டும்தான் fraternity. Only if you identify the fellow citizens with the fraternity, our constitutional identity can be built and our nation can be built. So fraternity is crucial. இதுதான் 5வது warning. So see your fellow human beings and fellow citizens through as a human being through fraternity rather than religion, religious lines, caste lines or gender lines. So this is what the 5 warnings which Ambedkar said. So by remembering all these 5 warnings, if we all the citizens are remembering these 5 warnings during our journey, surely our constitution will be a beacon to the entire world and it will survive for centuries to come. Thank you.